So who do we have out there? John, is Steve out there?
Yes, he is.
Okay, and I think we had a request from Josh to read a letter. Is he out there?
Yes, he is.
Okay, let's go over a few things first, and then we'll ask Josh to make his comments. But why don't we?
Larry's got a question.
What's that? I'm sorry.
Question.
Larry,
It's my recollection from 2 public meetings ago, when we opened the initial public hearing, we adjourned it to the next week, and then we had to cancel the meeting. As far as our minutes should show, the public hearing, we don't have to open a new one. The initial one is still open.
Right.
If I'm correct.
Right.
Okay, just want to make that clear.
Yeah, I get. We'll go ahead, John.
Another thing, Al, I think on the last couple of hearings, we actually just let everybody into the Zoom meeting rather than keeping them in the waiting room.
Okay.
That way they can see what's happening in the meeting and participate. We can mute them and unmute them as we need to, but this allows them to be right here.
Okay. So who do you have out there?
We've got the folks from the Dollar General team. We've got some residents. We've got the Justin Woods attorney. Not too many people, about 8 people. Al, can we just go ahead and admit them all?
Yeah, I guess so.
Thank you.
Okay, it's allowed them to be right here. Okay. So who do you have out there?
We've got the folks from the Dollar General team. We've got some residents. We've got the Justin Woods attorney. Not too many people, about 8 people out. Just go ahead and admit them all.
Yeah, I guess so.
If you're listening on YouTube, there's a delay, and if you have it playing in the background, it's going to be an echo and confuse you.
Yes.
Okay, we set, John? Okay. All right, what I wanted to do, since we had a gap there, I wanted to review some of the concerns that we had with the public and just go over these things real quickly. So I'm going to start and say, let's start with parking. So we have the parking lots located on the north side of the site, away from the residential to the south, and we also reduce the number of parking spaces. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Next, let's go to the buffering. There's going to be a fence line and a tree line on the south side. The board asked for more trees on the north side and on the east side. And I believe the applicant has added 10 more feet and is going to be putting up a berm as well on the north side. Is that correct, Steve?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Let's go next to lighting. I guess, Steve, you reduced or changed the lighting. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. It was at 3,000 CCT. We lowered it to 2,700 CCT per the town request, which is almost half of what a usual site would be. So definitely warmed it up.
Okay, and the lighting is going to be off a half hour after closing, correct?
That's right.
Yeah, okay. Let's go next, compatibility. So it's going to be similar to the one in North Lansing. It's going to have a peak roof, corner entrance. And did we settle on colors on the outside? Did we talk about that at all, board? Steve?
I'm not sure if you have settled on the colors. We have submitted them, and they're in your hands. I think it was similar to what was proposed at the last one. It might actually have changed to more natural tones, earth tones than what we had previously at Lansing, North Lansing, I should say.
So, John, do you remember, is there a couple options out there that we have to decide on? John, I can't. Go
The
ahead.
applicant did submit elevations on their original submittal. Let me see if I can pull them up.
Okay, when would we be talking about and confirming those colors? Board members? Larry, go ahead.
The colors in North Lansing are neutral. They're like a taupe and a gray.
Right,
These almost look a little bluer than the ones in North Lansing. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm not sure if the blue is the latest. If you give me a minute, I might be able to find it.
What's on the old elevation is almost tan, except for over the entrance.
For clarity, we're talking about hardy plank or similar cementitious siding, not metal siding, and it's not a split face block. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Sharpstein.
Thanks, Steve.
You're welcome.
okay, so that, I guess that's something we've got to work on then. Did you get a couple of color options and confirm that at the next meeting? Is that correct?
Mhm.
Steve?
Yeah, I might be able to pull it up. I'm just looking for it right now, the latest ones.
Well, Al,
Yes, sir. Len?
so we're on the new pictures we got. I didn't see a fence on the south side. On the elevation, right elevation, if I'm correct, that may be a fence in that picture. They are nice big trees, but if we could get it filled in totally, I think it'd be nice. And I see
Yeah,
here
what-
he's adding more.
Lynn, did you see the new plans that were submitted? Did you pick those up?
I didn't get elevations in my packet, but I certainly saw what was C701, which is the.
Yeah, I thought there was a fence on those plans. Steve?
There is a fence on the south side. It shows
Right.
up on C301, which is a very nice segue into another thought that I had. I would not hate seeing a fence on the north side and on the east side.
Yeah.
The fence on the north side would help mitigate headlights for cars pulling into the parking space. I know the 2-foot berm was intended to do that, but I also know that the headlights on my pickup truck are higher than 2 feet. So I think this site is different from the site in North Lansing, where in North Lansing, there were no residences on the south side of the building and no residences west of the building. In this case, there are residences on the north side, the south side, and the east side. And I think that we should have another look at increasing the fencing and buffering.
At least on the east side, they're uphill, and I don't know how a fence would solve any concerns. I mean, the fence is 6 foot and they're elevated, they're way up on that hillside.
Yeah, they're
I don't know.
considerably higher.
I don't know about on the east, maybe on the north. Board members, comments?
North, and I would like the east.
Deb,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. Weren't you reviewing what we've already discussed and what the latest plans are in
Yeah.
preparation to the hearing?
Yeah,
Rather than our decision making?
all right, let me finish going over what we've talked
Yeah.
about or what's come up, and then we can go back to the fencing. How's that? Is that okay, board members?
Listen for the neighbors too.
All right, let's move on. I've got a few other topics and then we'll go on. One thing that did come up in one of the questions was security. Steve, is the parking lot going to be, is there going to be cameras or monitors?
I'm actually not sure about that one. Bob Gage, my client, is on, and he might be able to shed some light. It says connecting to audio, so he's probably trying to log on to say something right now. In the meantime, I did find the elevations that we submitted with the newer colors. Did you want to see that?
Sure.
All right. Hold on one second. Can you see?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, I
So
think
that-
when it comes to colors, Al, I think that we want to hear from the public what their ideas are.
Mhm.
Okay, so at least that's out there for the public to observe and take a look at. As far as that's the proposed, Steve, the color that you're looking at, it
Yes,
looks like a shade of tan and a darker shade of gray maybe on the bottom.
that's
a dark
correct.
gray in the over the doors or windows.
Yep, that
Okay.
is right.
Okay, Len, we've got the color. Okay, let's move on back to the, we've got a question on the parking lot and security. As far as the board members are concerned, would you like to see that parking lot monitored? Yes, no, maybe?
No.
Any feedback? No cares, okay.
It's worth it.
All right, let's move on. Next, I've got a list of ingress and egress. I guess the DOT, we're waiting on the DOT on that, some of that, Steve or John?
That's correct. The applicant's working with the DOT for their curb cut permit and highway work permit. And they're in that process as we speak.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and they're approving of the stage 2, the technical side of things. We did reach out to them regarding drainage was an area of concern. And there's a pre-existing condition with the ditch in the right of way that fills up during large storm events. So we reached out to them and, in our opinion, additional pipe might be needed. And we wanted to see if the DOT had any plans to put in a new culvert. And they recently let us know that they don't think our project is worsening the condition, but they don't currently have plans to add a culvert at this time. So just wanted to give that update to you regarding drainage.
Okay, and then again, regarding the drainage, John, we still have the town's engineer to finalize things?
Yes, so the applicant originally submitted a SWIP and TG Miller commented on it. And the applicant has replied and made some revisions to those comments and TG Miller is reviewing those, so.
Okay.
We should hear
Larry, did you
something
have a
next week.
question?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. I read the letter from Richard Stevens at the DOT. And he did close his letter by asking, is there any opportunity for Dollar General to detain more runoff? Do you see any other possible solutions for the frontage that we may not be thinking of? So he is kind of saying that they aren't going to do anything more. And is there anything more that can be done on site to reduce the runoff? And as you said just now, Al, that's still in the hands of the town engineer.
Okay, okay.
And we did look at our system. Currently, we're maxed out for how big it can be for detaining runoff ourselves. And we're reducing on the order of, I think it's around 40% for peak runoff rates from pre to post conditions.
Okay. Okay, and I have one other item on my list, and it came up was, and it's, I don't know if you probably can't help us, Steve, but there was a question on donations. Does the dollar store provide donations to nonprofits in the community? Is there anyone?
Yeah, I believe they do. Bob Gage usually, I've heard him say this before, that they do donate to local charities. And I think they have a literacy program too that they're involved with.
They're very heavily involved in the national literacy program. They do submit to some local charities. Typically, the way that works is the charities will contact the managers of the store, and that information is passed on to the corporate office, and they decide which charities they're going to donate to on a yearly basis.
Okay, so Bob, it's up to the local community to approach the dollar store in regards to those donations.
That's correct.
Okay, all right, that's good to know.
Bob, do
All
you
right,
have
I
any,
guess-
wait,
Go ahead,
Bob,
Sandy.
Do you have a dollar figure on what they are, can donate a year, each store?
I'm not sure what it is per store. I could look into that and see if I could get that information for you, but I'm not sure what that, how it breaks down per store. I know they have close to 18,000 stores in operation today. So I just have to check with them and see what that number is.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's all I had on my list. John, where do you want to go now? Do you think questions or Josh's letter?
I think it
or
might be
more
wise to,
comments?
I think it might be wise to let the applicant run through their revisions, and then after that, allow the public to comment on the plan.
Okay, I guess, Steve, anything else?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think you guys took some great notes because you covered everything pretty much that I wanted to say. But one other thing I did want to point out was for drainage. It was brought up at a previous meeting that there's drainage tiles that run from east to west. Our survey didn't pick them up, but what we've done was we've revised the plans to show a swale on the easterly property line. And the intention is to daylight any drainage tiles that they find, and then that could be diverted around our site, and it'll ultimately make its way to the ditch out in front of the store as it currently does right now to mimic existing drainage patterns. And then we didn't forget about our own site with those drainage tiles. We're doing something under our site currently. So what we've done is propose under drains throughout the parking field to help control the groundwater as those drainage tiles did in its existing condition. So that was it. We changed the lighting as well, what we mentioned, and we have been in correspondence with the DOT, and you guys have already noticed that we've added a berm there, and then we placed the white spruce trees on top of the berm. So hopefully that will increase the buffering and the screening that we've already shown and added to our plans.
And that drainage from the parking lot, under the parking lot, is going into the stormwater ponds first?
The under drains will daylight in the ditch in the right of way. That's just more of a groundwater control situation.
Okay.
The runoff from the parking lot, the surface runoff, will all be directed into our system so that it could be treated for quality and quantity.
Okay.
Steve, you mentioned that swale on the east side. Is that going to divert water to the north and then along the north property line to the west to the ditch?
That's correct. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions, board members? Anything else, Steve?
No, I think that's it. We're happy to answer any other questions or listen to what the public has to say.
Okay, I think, John, then I guess anyone out there that wants to make comments? Heather?
I only had one person pre-register with me. That was Josh. But I imagine others would like to speak.
Okay, why don't we admit Josh? I think Josh had a letter that he wanted to read.
Good evening, everybody. How you doing?
Hi.
So I do have a letter. It sounds like you guys have had a chance to take a look at it. As I listen to the conversations going on today, I'm not so sure that I want to read the letter today. I think
Okay.
it feels like this conversation has moved quite further down the road than it was back in November when we had our public board meeting. So, I've got, I think maybe today I'll just focus on the recommendations. And if you don't mind, please read the letter. I'll just summarize it by saying I'm a little concerned in North Lansing and in areas that are zoned rural agriculture. I did spend a lot of time reading the zoning ordinances, and really what I've seen since I've lived here is that pretty much anything can be built in rural ag. And I think what's unfortunate is that the neighbors that live in these areas are impacted pretty significantly. And I know the neighbors that live close to this project, objectively will lose quite a bit of their property value. And I think what's happening in Northern Lansing, at least, is that developers and commercial interests are really deciding what our town looks like in the end. And it isn't so much the residents that have control. Our zoning ordinances, I think, are written in such a way that it's very easy for somebody to come in and execute their project. And I think it's really time for us to revisit those zoning ordinances and maybe fix some wording and make it really more in line with our comprehensive plan. And what I'm afraid of is that, this one particular Dollar General store is built, but then I'm more concerned about the 10 other projects that are going to come across your desk in the next few years that I think we're going to just have to say it's their legal right to build it, and we're going to build it. And I think that in the long term, 10, 20 years from now, we're going to be looking back and we're not going to like what we see in Lansing. And so I just like, maybe more, my comment is more that I think we need to really take a pause and look at our zoning ordinances before more projects, I think, like this one are considered.
Yeah, John,
Oh,
that's paramount on our agenda this year. So yes, that's part of the work plan, is to review the zoning in the northern part of the town.
okay, that's great.
And we would appreciate your volunteerism once we get going on that. If you would like to make some comments or express your concerns at that point in time, sure, we welcome you to join with us.
I'd love to. I'd love to be part of the subcommittee to get involved a little more.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
I want to be part of the solution. I live in North Lansing, and I think there's, from what I've found from reading the ordinances in other towns, there's some really good ordinances out there. We don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel, I don't think. I think there's some really good laws out there that we can look at and take their best practices from.
Okay. Yep, it's on our agenda.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the one you can read my letter. The one I thought I would talk about is we just talked about stormwater drainage a little bit. I know that was a concern from a lot of speakers in the November meeting. And I'm not a civil or environmental engineer, but I have read some documents from the Stormwater Management Design Manual that DEC has out. And I am familiar, at least, with a rule to do a downstream analysis. And it only applies under certain circumstances. And it was hard for me to understand if it applies in this case. But I think for certainly Steve and other engineers looking at this, I think a downstream analysis, I think, could help inform a good stormwater design at this location and really alleviate some of the problems that neighbors have been kind of living through over the years. So this is an opportunity, I think, to take a closer look at that. And if it's required by the DEC, even more the reason to put the effort there.
Okay. John, do you have any quick comments on that?
I could quickly address that, Josh. The downstream analysis is for large projects like 50 acres, in size, projects that are much larger in scope, and that's to be used if they don't want to meet the other standards of the permit. So typically a project that's disturbing 1 acre or more has to treat the water quality of the 90th percentile rain event. They need to provide channel protection for the 1 year storm event. So that's to prevent erosion So they have to detain the water for 24 hours. Overbank protection for the 10-year storm event. And what that basically just means is, making sure that the pipe sizes can convey a 10-year storm event. And then safely pass a 100-year storm event. And if they feel like they don't need to do that, then they need to prove it by a downstream analysis showing that there won't be an impact. So it's kind of a relief valve if they're saying that their project doesn't need to meet all of those standards. Then the DEC is saying prove it with a downstream analysis. But this project has designed a stormwater pollution prevention plan that they're asserting meets those standards, and our engineer is reviewing that.
Okay, great. Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Okay, thanks. All right, Heather, anyone else out there that would like to make some comments tonight? John?
Yes,
Mr. Woods
Mr.
requested to go next.
I'm sorry?
Mr. Woods requested to go next.
Okay,
Good evening, everybody. Justin Woods. I represent Nicole and Jimmy Eschler, who are direct abutters and 1122 Ridge Road. And I also now represent Kristen and Helen Kaplan at 1148 Ridge Road. So both direct abutters on both sides of the project. And I think that Josh's comments are well attuned to the disconnect between the zoning and the comprehensive plan. And I would encourage you, because of the disconnect there, as well as the known flooding issues that have been raised by numerous abutters, as well as the impact on the agricultural landscape and the scenic byway, which has submitted written comments to the board, that this project warrants a full environmental assessment. I don't think the short form gives you enough necessary information to do a complete environmental evaluation of the project, and that the long form would give you the appropriate information to make an analysis of the project's overall impacts and its consistency with the planning documents that have been adopted by this board and the town board. I won't go through all of the individual sections of the various plans, the comprehensive plan, the scenic byway plan, the agricultural protection plan. But I did summarize those and include the language from each of those in my written correspondence, which I would ask to be included in the record, and ask you to take that hard, complete look at the impact of this project.
Mr. Woods, when did you submit that?
I did. I submitted it to the staff for the record.
How long ago was that? Was that recently?
Yes, sir.
Just today then?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. We haven't seen that yet. All right.
But they're an update of the documents and the report that I submitted to the board back in November after reviewing the additional documents that the applicant submitted.
Okay. Okay. Anything else, Mr. Woods? Real quick.
I think I can rest on the papers that I submitted. The primary thing I'm asking for the board is to require the applicant to do the long environmental assessment form.
Okay, thank you. Next, Heather.
No one else has requested to speak.
No one else? Okay, I guess the question is, should we be closing the public meeting today? Board members? Comments? Recommendations?
Based on the fact, I don't think we've heard anything new. We've heard these concerns for quite a while now, and I've frustrated myself. I couldn't find, Heather did an analysis of the major points people had made, and it's somewhere on my computer. But I haven't heard anything new. Certainly there's a lot for us to think about.
Sure.
So I don't see any reason to keep the hearing open.
Okay, so would you like to make a motion to close it?
So made.
A
Second.
And Heather, do we have to take a call on this? to
Yes.
close this?
I haven't in the past.
Okay, so all in favor of closing the public meeting, raise a hand or yay? Opposed?
Yay.
We
And
have one
just-
opposed, is that correct?
I have a comment.
Sorry, go ahead, Sandy.
So just so the public knows that even though the hearing is closed, they could still submit comments or concerns or questions, correct?
Right.
Right. Mhm. Okay, and then the last one was abstain. So I guess that motion has been, Tom,
I'm abstaining.
you abstain. Okay, Tom abstained. So I guess, go ahead, Tom.
I would like to talk about the long environmental assessment.
Oh, okay, John, is that appropriate at this point in time?
I mean, if Tom's got a question about it or he'd like to speak about it, and it was something
Okay.
that Mr. Woods brought up, it's certainly appropriate to speak about it.
Okay, go ahead, Tom.
Well, I support the idea of a long environmental assessment. I think that's only fair to the neighbors surrounding this place, because it will have an impact.
Deb, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question. I even wrote it down. Will the long environmental form give us more things that we can't get with a very careful use of the short form?
John, you want to tackle that one for us, please?
I wouldn't necessarily say that. A long form is meant for large projects, and especially type 1 projects that are assumed to be having an environmental impact right from the get-go. The DEC themselves suggest using a long form for unlisted actions, which this is, if certain thresholds have been exceeded, which this project does not come near. However, this board could ask for a long form if they feel it would be of value to them. My professional opinion is that you're not going to get a lot more information out of it, honestly, because the scope and scale of this project is small compared to what a long form is usually dealing with. But I'm sure the applicant would probably be amenable to filling one of those out if this board thought it would add value.
I mean, I believe the concerns that we have with environmental flooding, drainage, things of that nature are still going to be covered in the review of the short form, correct?
That's correct.
And just because it's a long form doesn't mean it's going to have a more thorough review necessarily. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, a lot of the questions won't be applicable.
Okay. Anyone else have any details, questions, whether we go short form or long form at this point in time?
Didn't we use the long form for the Osmika project?
No.
No?
Used it for the Marabito project.
Okay.
Could Guy weigh in?
Sure. Guy, are you out there?
He was.
He's here.
His name's there.
Guy, can you help us with an overview?
Just give him a second now. I think he's maybe having some technical issues. I see
Okay.
mute coming on and off on him.
Might have to log back in.
You want to try to leave the meeting and come back in, Guy?
Who has his phone number?
Anyone else while we're waiting for Guy? Any other comments?
He's gonna call in, he said.
Okay.
He just sent me a message.
I feel the same way, that the short form will answer the questions. And the project will, if anything, help the flooding issues, but they can't control the whole field and the whole watershed.
I think they also can't control those rain events where you get the 1-year rain event in a day.
Well, while we're waiting for Guy, let's switch back. There was a comment about a fence on the north side. Let's just real quickly toss that around for a minute or two. As well as on the east side. I think there's some comments where some believe it should be there on the east, other members maybe not so much. Any strong opinions one way or the other on that fence on the north or east side?
Well, I certainly think that it is warranted on the north side. If you look at the existing Dollar General in North Lansing, we decided to only buffer it on the north side, and as you come up the road on the south side, it's brightly lit, and that there's a open area to the south of it. In this case, we're looking at houses on the north and the south, as well as kind of across the street to a certain degree, and I think the more we can buffer those, the better, and a fence on the north side would help. I agree that on the east side, there are neighbors, but they are upslope, so I don't know as a fence is really going to help a lot with lighting. I think to a certain degree it may help in terms of just screening them visually from things that they don't want to see.
I think they're not looking as much at the driveways, and the trees could be beefed up there. And I think it should be fully realized that the buffering, should a tree die or something happen to it, needs to be replaced. It's part of the program.
Yeah,
It's
that's
not something that, oh, we put it in. We're not having the case of the disappearing berm.
Yeah. Now, Steve, you added 10 more feet so you could put a berm in and put the trees in. Is there enough space for a fence as well?
It's kind of tough right now. I think it's getting tight because we also have our stormwater that we're trying to treat on site in that parking area. So we kind of swale on that north side. And if we, for a berm, a fence and trees to all fit, it's kind of tough. I can see a fence with the trees, but I don't think I can see all three of those. Like, we can probably lose the berm and be able to do the fence and the trees. But I'm not sure we can do all three of those.
Okay. Larry, you have a comment?
I think a fence would definitely do more than a berm.
Yeah, I do.
Because
I would rather see the
not gonna be
trees than
high
a
enough
fence
to
than the berm.
headlight.
If you can do both two items, if it comes down to two items, I think the fence and the trees are superior than the trees and a berm. Board members, anyone else?
I think two tree lines would be better than one. I think that makes a big difference in terms of visually blocking things.
Yeah, I don't know if there's enough space for a double tree line on that north side. Larry? Go ahead, Larry.
You still have to maintain the ditch on the north side that they're diverting the runoff with, but if a staggered tree line with a fence running between the two lines could be done, that would be one way to take care of it.
Boy,
And
I don't know,
again-
once those trees grow up, I think they would encroach upon that fence. I would think it'd be best to have the fence on one side or the other.
Well, to me, the fence would be better than just the trees because the trees aren't going to stop the headlights of the vehicles on a winter evening from shining into the place or the house next door or even up the road. But a fence would. Now, for myself, I like the idea of a double row of trees with the fence.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
staggered trees make a much better buffer than a single row.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I mean, but eventually those trees are gonna grow up and into a solid border 5 years, 10 years down the road. That's all gonna be a solid tree line there that there won't be much in regards to the view either way.
But could I
Yeah.
speak to the east side?
Sure.
The upper end of the lot is 12 feet higher than the level of the parking lot at about the middle of the store. So any fence that went up there is certainly, even though the house back there is probably, 5 or 6
600.
meters, 5 or 6 meters higher than the back of the property here. A fence at the high point of the property certainly would block at least the turnaround area, the loading dock, and the dumpster shed.
Good one.
Steve, what's your comment on that?
I think I'm wondering what benefit the east side fence is gonna do, just based on, I think the house is over 1,000 feet away, up there, up that hill. So I'm just, yeah, it's looking like a little over 1,000 feet, just measuring it out on Google here. So, yeah, I'm wondering what it will do, to really screen that area.
May I comment
Larry, go
now?
ahead. Larry,
I think one of the things that's going to be obvious, Steve, is the people in that house have expressed concerns about what their view is going to be of your loading dock and your dumpster area. And I think that anything that could be done to mitigate their concerns or to make their situation better would be good.
Okay. How are we doing on Guy, John?
I think that he has called in.
So we want to switch gears and go back to the short form, long form scenario, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So short form versus long form. Well, in a nutshell, it's pretty easy if you read the seeker regulations and you read the training and guidance that was provided when they did the last two updates on seeker. And that is that not only, and I attended in multiple areas. I went to the Region 7 as well as to a training in Rochester so I could see what different areas of the DEC were looking at and how they interpreted all that. But one of the things they emphasized is that they really did not want, in fact, were requiring municipalities not to keep using the long form when the short form was indicated, because that defeats the purpose of seeker, i.e. not to slow down the project. So there's obviously tension because, all projects and not doing a project, those all have impacts. So the question is, does this rise to the level? Is there something unique here that would mandate a long form? Now, the DEC's general guidance is if you're right near one of the key thresholds that would trigger type 1, then a long form might be indicated. Or, even if you're not close to triggering type 1, but you can throw a rock and land it in the Grand Canyon, then the type 1 might be indicated. So is there something extraordinary here? Is this project more like the Navy Shipyards project or the Orchard Park Stadium project? or is it a small retail store in a rural community? You can debate it till the cows come home. The board certainly can request whether it wants a long form or a short form, but under all the guidance that the DEC has provided, a long form is not indicated here. A short form is appropriate. Moreover, the data that you would get from a long form wouldn't actually provide you with a lot more information concerning the impact issues that you've already identified. However, until you see the long form, that's merely a projection, and you don't know if in fact that will come to pass. I'm hoping that there's not confusion publicly or otherwise between the type of seeker form you do and the classification of the seeker action you're undertaking, because using a long form for an unlisted action can cause all sorts of confusion for people who will suddenly think, ooh, now it's type 1, or ooh, now it must be coordinated review. And those terms do not translate in that manner under seeker. So I agree with John. I think the short form is what is legally required. It is what is indicated. This project doesn't get close to a type 1 threshold, but to the extent that it has the potential to have significant non-mitigatable environmental impacts, you're going to have to look at the seeker, at the mitigation, at the site conditions, and make a reasoned determination under seeker, regardless of whether you're using the leaf or the fief. So that's my input. And at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter because it's completely up to the board. You're the deciding agency, so you decide.
Okay, thank you, Guy. Any questions for Guy? Anyone out there? Well, John, what do we
Sorry
need?
for the.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, sorry for the delay. Apparently, it's some privacy setting that got toggled on the laptop. So at least the phone got through.
Okay, thank you, Guy. Thank you.
Yep.
Hold on, Guy.
John. Oh, Larry.
Is there, Guy, a potential liability for the town? I agree with you. I know the difference between the long form and the short form. Is there a potential liability for the town in going through with the long form on an item like this where it's not really required?
Liability probably wouldn't be the word that I would use, but the answer to your question is no. Whether you use a long form or a short form for an unlisted action doesn't create liability. So if you could have, let's say this action was close to the threshold and you could have elected to use a long form, but you didn't, that wouldn't create a liability. And if you use the long form where even the DEC has indicated you shouldn't, that wouldn't create a liability. What it's really about is information gathering and trying to target the information that you need, and the hard look that's required is in the analysis.
Okay. John, should I just poll the board for an opinion whether the short form is adequate? Would that be the appropriate means?
Yeah,
Well,
that would be the appropriate means. I mean, you've heard from both your professionals, so.
Okay, I'm going to ask out there for board members for a show of hands. For those of you who feel the short form would still gather enough scrutiny or review that would be adequate for the task at hand. So those of you who believe that we're okay using the short form, would you just raise your hand? Okay, and those who believe that the long form would be more appropriate? Anyone out there? So I guess I think at this point in time, the board believes that the short form would be adequate, and I think we're okay with that. Is that correct, John?
That's what it looks like, Al.
Okay. All right, so we'll continue next week with the review of the short form, I believe. Sandy?
Mr. Carey sent me a chat message and he didn't get let into our meeting before the public hearing was closed. So he wanted to know if he can make a comment.
Regarding what's at hand right now?
Yeah, the project.
Sure.
Go ahead. John or Heather, can you let him in for 3 minutes?
Sandy, thank you. Can the board hear me?
Yes.
All right, thank you for letting me in here at this point. I just have a couple of quick comments. First, regarding the considerations and stuff, I was listening earlier with Justin Woods had sent a letter that, from what I understand, some of you have not had a chance to read yet, and would love that be taken into consideration before final decisions are being made, since that was submitted prior to the start of the meeting. So I'm far from an attorney, so I'll avoid and just keep this very plain language. The other piece is I'm a resident on the east side of the project, uphill, and in our neighborhood, which may not be everybody's, but in our neighborhood, that is our backyard. And we've had obviously a tremendous amount of things going on in this area regarding development. When various messaging is sent to the Lansing residents, we continually hear about wanting engagement, wanting feedback, and really working together to make the town what it is that not only newcomers may want or need, but also what current residents want and need. And I would love to see strong consideration for really strong barriers that, if removed, blown over, whatever, are replaced to the point where our backyards in this area are disturbed to the minimal amount possible. And the amount of the loading dock and the turnaround and other stuff that's now over on the east side of the project, that's heavily impacts far greater number of people than across the street. And so I'll stop there and just thank you for your consideration with that. And in keeping in mind that we have been active in government and providing feedback for years, and would love to be heard and seen some actual really strong consideration for our voices and our homes and the value of our homes.
Okay. Deb, you had a question?
Yeah, I'd like to ask Mr. Carey what your opinion would be of having fences on the east side or trees or something that would block out.
Thanks for asking, Deborah. I think both, and here's the reasoning behind both. The trees are what are going to give us the height. You can double row the trees to really mitigate the impact of the lighting. If I had more confidence maybe in the landscaping from what I've seen with other Dollar Generals in this area, at least, I probably wouldn't request the fence. But I have not seen any kind of strong historical successful attempts at landscaping, at least what I've seen in this area, that even would resemble enough of what I think the neighbors on the east side deserve for the project. And in addition, the fence, if something were to happen with the trees, which will likely happen at some point with the winds up here, the fence would block the high beams and different headlights that would project up, easily project 1,000 feet into our backyards and our houses.
Thanks.
Thanks for asking.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. My point exactly.
Mr. Carey, you did make a point that Mr. Woods did provide us with additional information, and not all of us have had the opportunity to read that. So at this point in time, we did take a poll of board members, but I still would like us to be able to go over and review Mr. Woods' concerns, and we probably would take this same poll again at the next meeting, whether to go on with the short form or go to a long form. So I would like to at least recognize his concerns and for us to be able to review that. Board members? Yes? Larry?
I have read Mr. Wood's letter. I think that any of us that haven't had an opportunity probably should take a look at it.
Okay, so we're going to give all the board members an opportunity to review that, and we'll bring that question up, short form, long form, at the next meeting. So where are we at right now? John, where are we at on this? Would you have to determine whether we go with a berm and trees on the north side, or trees and a fence on the north side? Is that where we're at right now?
That's where you left off.
Steve, you want to, would you be receptive to taking that berm out and adding a fence and trees on the north side?
I think it's something that we can consider. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Trees and a fence on the north side is in place of the berm. Yeah.
Okay.
I think the east side could handle that too.
Yeah.
I think the east side should have that too.
Staggered trees,
Yes.
2 rows,
And a fence.
and a fence. Yes.
Okay, so John, or Steve, where are we gonna be on this? You're gonna consider that, or get back to us on that, or where are we at on this?
Yeah, I'm gonna have
Do it.
to. I'm gonna have to get back to you on that one.
Okay, all right.
Al, if I could make just a suggestion or comment.
Sure, Larry, please.
I can see where a fence and a single row of trees, even though I like a double row better, would work on the north side, particularly since we don't have a great deal of property there to work with. But on the east side, there's plenty of room for a double row of trees, staggered, and a fence. And I think that Mr. Carey's comments reinforce what Lynn and I were saying before about that really not being a useless option. There are people that live up there, and I think that this would help them.
Okay. Well, Steve, you've heard the board's concerns and the neighbors' concerns.
So thank you all for your comments. I appreciate it.
Steve, I've got a question on the sign out front, the one on the post, or however. I've seen the diagram from November that shows a pillar type, which I'm assuming that's not what you're going to use because it won't meet the sign square footage requirements. And I haven't seen a revised. I don't know if you're planning to put a sign in like you have in North Lansing.
I think the plan was to do the same
On a
as
post?
North Lansing. I'm pretty sure that's what it was, a monument sign, same square footage and everything.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess a monument sign indicates that there's going to be a large base that's like solid, that's vertical. It looks like a monolith, and then it has a sign on the top. Whereas what's in North Lansing is a post with the sign on the top. And that's not what I saw in the sheet showing the proposed signage from the submittal in November, and I don't think I've seen a different submittal since then. So I was just wondering if you're going to update that.
I'm gonna have to take a look at that. I could have sworn it was the same sign as North Lansing, but I'm gonna check on that.
Okay.
Wow, that's pretty tall, 6 foot. And then
To the
another
bottom.
4. Wow.
Not subtle.
Yeah, I would prefer to see something closer to grade myself.
Yeah, I think most board members would probably say the same thing.
Yeah.
I was a little shocked by that when I went up to the North Lansing store and saw how tall the sign was there.
Is it going to be backlit? I'm
It'll
assuming.
be internally illuminated.
Mm.
And does
would
that
be-
stay on 24 hours, Steve?
No, I think it goes off when the lights are off. Bob can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it goes off when the lights are going off.
Yeah, the sign will be turned out whenever the parking lot lights go out. That's typically an hour after the store closes.
Okay, so any other concerns, board members, on this project for tonight?
Well, I think, Al, that your comment to the board members to go and look at the existing store, North Lansing. I'd never been in a Dollar General before. So I think it would also be useful for members of the community to go in and check out the store inside and see what their opinion is of the approaches from both directions driving down the road. And again, I think as we look at color on the outside of the building, that there's a lot of Dollar Generals in the area for them to look at, so they can potentially comment on what color they'd like to see on the outside of that building.
Deb?
Yeah, I want to compliment you on that suggestion, Al. That was really helpful to do. One of the things I noticed is in North Lansing, the Dollar General in appearance kind of fits with what's there. It kind of looks like the place we used to call Linda's, kind of fits with the fire department. The color works there. So I'd like to see some from Steve and the others, some comparison of prevalent colors in the area on the that road up there on Ridge Road. Are there colors that would fit better rather than that blasé beige that so many Dollar Generals have?
Okay.
And they
Yeah,
have
my comment on after reviewing it in person, I think we probably should have had more landscaping on the south side of the one in North Lansing. It kind of hits you as you come up to the crest of the road. Other than that, I think it fits in with the neighborhood. That's the only, and then the fencing on the north, I don't know if it really helps a lot. I mean, that might have been a super adequacy in a way, but it's there, it's fine. Larry?
I will note that in North Lansing, the adjustments that have been made to the lights to drop them down have greatly improved the approach from the south.
Good.
When the lights were finished and just before the store opened, when they first turned the lights on, there was a terrific glare to any northbound traffic on the highway. And I mentioned that to John, and he got together with the developers and they took care of it.
Good.
So
good.
They were responsive, and the lights are adjustable so that sort of thing can be addressed.
Okay, to summarize then, Steve, I guess the board members would like to see some changes to the buffer on the north as well as the east. I think you were going to double check on the security of the parking lot, in off hours. Is it going to be monitored? Which probably isn't a bad idea.
Yeah.
Having that lot open for anyone, after the store is closed, it'd be nice if there was some cameras going. Let's see, what else do we have? Anyone else? Did we have other things, members?
I think the sign could be looked at.
Yep.
Not necessarily maxing it. I think it could be a little more subtle.
Okay. I think, Deb, anything else?
I think Mr. Wood's letter mentioned something architectural that could be done to improve the appearance also. So when we read that letter again carefully, we might have some ideas, or maybe Steve can read it carefully.
Steve, have you seen the letter?
It was just forwarded to me a few minutes.
Okay, yeah, okay, so, if you would please read the letter, and if there's any items in there that you can address next meeting, please do so. All right, so I think, can we kind of wrap this up for tonight as far as the dollar store? Anything else? Okay, I think we're good for tonight. Thank you, Steve. All right.
My pleasure. Thank you all for your time.
Okay, thank you. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, elder citizens that came.
Yeah.
Yep. Everyone, thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see, where are we at now? Next item. Let's see. I wanted to bring something up that I talked with CJ and John about. We have 3 items that we want to give attention to this year. One is the ag, the zoning in the northern part of the town. The second item is site plan. And the third item is subdivision, green space, trails, fees, that type of thing. And I suggested to CJ, and I'm looking for your feedback, is maybe taking the planning board and dividing it up into 3 committees, 3 people each. So everyone serves on one of the committees for one of those task items. Rather than having all the board members review everything on those 3 items, it would go to the committee first for their review, back to the initial committee, then back to the planning board. So the idea is trying to save work or effort on the planning board as a whole. Whether this goes through or not, we still have to see, but this is an initial, question. Would you be willing to serve on one of the committees?
Yes.
My comment,
Absolutely.
it's a great idea, but after we do that, we'll all get back together again.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
What if
It
we're
will go to
interested in more-
the board as a whole, but it's the first step of the committee trying to clean some of it up before it goes to the whole board is the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since we're an odd number of people, I'd be willing to do both site plan and ag.
Okay, so this is what I'd like you to do, if you would, please. There's the 3 committees, is site plan, the ag, and the subdivision. So if you would send John a note and say your preference is 1, is which one is your number 1 preference, number 2 preference, and number 3 preference. And then once we get all the numbers in, John, myself, CJ, and maybe Sandy would get together and try to divide all of us up into 3 different committees if this goes through.
Sounds
So if
good.
you would, sometime this week, if you'd send John a note and then we can get together at a later time. Preference A, B, and C.
Yep.
Okay, great. Anything else? Board members you want to bring up at this time?
Can you send out an email about the 3 different committees?
Sure.
I just wanted to know, is there anything that's coming up the next meeting that we should be thinking about? I know we have this Dollar General, but is there other projects coming up?
John?
It's possible that there'll be another site plan application for a site plan amendment for a motorsports out on, gosh, what's the street I'm trying to think of?
Brewville.
Thank you. Yeah. If they can get their package together, and I think we'll probably have a lot line adjustment to be referred just because of the 1 acre size as well.
Could you elaborate on this project a little bit more?
No, I can't. It's not a complete application right now.
Okay.
But
it's for a motor speedway or
no. That's why I don't want to comment on it, Tom. I don't have complete materials. I haven't reviewed it at all. It's not for anything like that. It's more like it looks to be more of like a custom shop that already exists, and they're just expanding. But
okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Okay.
So Al,
yeah, Dean?
CJ had a pretty tight calendar and schedule for review. So I'm wondering how that's going to impact our next meeting now that they've got a code committee in place. I don't know, maybe John or Joe, maybe you guys know a little behind the scenes how quick that codes committee is coming up to speed, and how quickly we think we're going to get something from the codes committee to the board? Is that going to happen at our next meeting?
I don't think so, Dean. I mean, we haven't had our first meeting yet.
We've been trying to find times. CJ sent out a poll for people, and she's trying to get something the last week of January, first week of February, but we don't have a date yet. So we should be meeting sometime in that time period, and that's going to be our first time meeting and really setting things up.
So based on that, obviously the whole schedule is going to slip, but we'll do everything we can to pick up the slack and see that it doesn't slip that much.
Yeah, I guess that was part of my point is we just need to be cognizant that we don't want that schedule to continue to slip. And so we'll all have to work hard to try to keep on track as much as we can.
Oh, I'm with you there. I think we need to move on this as quickly as we can. And yes, it's getting started slowly, but let's keep it moving as quickly as we can, because I really want to get to the point where we're getting the public input, because that's probably the most important part.
Okay.
Well, point being, people have to understand that we're getting a start probably 3 to 4 weeks later than the original schedule called for, so that has got to be reflected.
Right.
Okay. Any other comments, concerns, anything to discuss?
We do need that November letter from Justin Woods. I went back and tried to find it. I couldn't find it. So that doesn't need to be posted in the
That's no problem, Dean. We can go through and make sure that all of Mr. Wood's correspondences are put together and made available.
Good,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay. All right. I guess thank you all for your time tonight. Thank you.
Oh, good. I can see Final Jeopardy.
And motion to close the meeting.
So moved.
So moved.
Second. Favor.
Yeah.
Aye.
All right, all. Thank you for your comments and concerns. Thank you. Good job. Good
Okay.
night.
Good night.
Bye.